Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Happy Saturday, Toronto Maple Leafs fans. Happy day after the trade deadline. Welcome to Game Over Toronto. My name is Lauren Williamson. On the other side of the screen, we have Dominic Jones here. Leafs, after the day after the trade deadline, after making some big trades, after losing the next 2 years worth of first round picks and ushering away a prospect we have grown for a year and a half, lose in a sad fashion to Colorado, 7-4. It wasn't close until it wasn't, and then it still wasn't. That was quite a game, Dominic. Now we're going to talk all about the individual players, but that game as a whole. How do you feel about that?
I'm feeling like it. I'm wishing it was still the day before the trade deadline, so we could go back in time and make a few changes, because that was like, it was a fun game. It was back and forth. If you take sort of a neutral look at it, you know, it was a lot of excitement. There were a lot of goals. There were a lot of nice goals. So it was fun in that regard. But it was another one of these games where the Leafs just didn't get enough shots. And they've managed to win a lot of those games this year. They've won some really goofy, lopsided shot games where they were on the lower end of it. And I hope this game kind of serves as a little bit of a wake-up call of, you can't do that every time. You can't do that every time. What did they wind up with? 21 shots, something like that? It was under 20 until scarily late in the game. And that's happened a few times this year where they've won. And this game was kind of looking like it was going to do that for a while there. They were up 4-2 at one point. And then, you know, you can't do that with a team as good as the Avalanche with, you know, players like McKinnon and that on that team. You can't expect that to work. So, yeah, a bit of a frustrating one, even though it was exciting in places and fun. If you were a neutral fan, I'm sure you enjoyed that one a lot more than Leafs fans did.
Yeah, it's funny, eh? Like the first period ends and it's 3-2, so you already know it's going to be a high-scoring game. Like you said, the shots were fairly lopsided right from the beginning. You know, by the end of the second period, the shots ended up coming back into the third period, showing 27-12 were the shots on goal for each respective team. So, yeah, like you said, a number of games this year where the Leafs have done that and come out with a win. And tonight, it really just sort of felt like if I'm being honest, I'm surprised it took Colorado that long to put the game away.
Yeah, they should have had this one put away a long time ago. And you know, it was the fact that Tavares and Marner each had two really nice shots in this game that sort of put the Leafs in a position where they could even be in the game.
Yeah.
Because the rest of the time, it was all Colorado all the time. You know, handful of good shifts here and there for the Leafs, but not enough, nowhere near enough. So, yeah, you look ahead now to Utah to try and close out this road trip and not have it be a complete wash. But when I was looking ahead at this road trip after the last game that I did, I was thinking, okay, you got to win two, and here we are 2 games into it, having lost 2, and it's not feeling great.
Yeah, it's not feeling great. And so let's get into the show. Make sure you hit subscribe. Like I said, we are going to talk specifically about the newbies on the team, Brandon Carlo and Scott Laughton, more in the second period as individuals. I do want to say that the only real way I was able to get through this game without being terribly upset about how badly the Leafs were playing was I was really just trying to focus on how the new players were playing with each line, with each new pairing. And at the beginning of the game, it was definitely very rough. It really felt like the Leafs, you know, weren't settled at all. It even though, you know, they come out with the lead in the first period, it was shocking that happened. I mean, they don't score first. Valeri Nichushkin gets the first goal with 56 seconds in. It was a really nice deflection. I don't put that one on Stoli at all. Mitch Marner ties it 3 minutes in. There was a really nice play from Nyes over to Mitch Marner under the blocker. He gets his 20th of the season. Nichushkin again puts the Avs back up, getting the second of what would be 3 goals in that game. And it was just a really tough start of the game for both of the new people. And so they kept getting hemmed all night. The Leafs could not clear the zone. even if they actually won the battle, they would get it to the blue line, and the Avs just were able to keep it in and keep the cycle going. And it just felt like they couldn't stop the waves of Colorado.
Yeah, and to make matters worse, we're watching our Leafs newbies and trying to see, can they do anything? Can they do anything? And there's Colorado's newbie getting 2 assists on the first 2 goals. Like you're like, oh, so that's how this is supposed to go, or that's the dream version of it.
That's the hope.
That's the hope. And the Leafs guys are sort of struggling to get in there. I wonder how quickly they got here. Like I have to assume they arrived at some point today. They met their teammates for the first time and said, good luck. So I will talk about that some more later, but it was, like you said, it was a frustrating first little bit. They, aside from what was a really nice pass from Matthew Nyes, a really smart play and a really nice pass to set up the Marner goal. You felt like on that play, okay, here's some hope, here's some light. Rough start, but we're bouncing back into it. And just a short time later, the same thing happens again, and Nichushkin's back on the board, and the Avs are leading again. And it was kind of a sign of things to come. I think that was the way the game started. Really, I think set the tone for what we were going to expect. And by the end of it, that's sort of how it looked like at the end, minus any additional Leaf scoring.
Yeah, it definitely felt like the Avs were coming wave after wave, and the Leafs just weren't able to get enough shots on. However, the tide did start to change after one of the newest players to the Leafs, Scott Laughton, actually just kind of got in the zone and blasted one on. Right after that, the Leafs, it really went to all of their legs, and that was when they really started to, connect a couple shifts together, connect a couple passes together, and actually, put themselves in a position to go into the first intermission up 3-2 with Tavares getting a really nice goal short side after a really, really nice play from Liam Nylander taking it away from the Avalanche. And then Marner, puts them in the lead with 3:56 to go. It really felt like as the period was going on, maybe the Leafs were going to clean up their action. Maybe they woke up. But as we got into the second period, they took a couple penalties, and I think it just really got away from them, and they never really got back into it.
Yeah, they didn't get anything going in the second period.
No.
As it was playing out, I sort of wasn't paying attention to the shot clock, and then I look up at it at one point and go, wait a minute, that feels way lower than it should be.
Yeah.
And then you think about the play and go, oh no, that's actually pretty accurate. It didn't feel like they carried any of the momentum from the first period into the second period. And the way the first period ended, that should have been stuff you could have carried forward. That was a great play from Bobby McMahon to set up the Marner goal. That looked like it was going to be an icing. I was expecting the whistle to blow, but he got in there quickly enough and kind of saved Marner, because Marner did one of his big loopy flip pass thingies, and it looked like that wasn't going to work, but McMahon got there in time, got it out in front, and Marner fires it home. So there was lots of stuff to build on, lots of good stuff, and the penalties happen, and then all of a sudden you're just sort of treading water. Nothing is really happening for the Leafs until they get their opportunity. You think, okay, here we go. Yeah. Tavares gets one, and you think, okay, maybe this is going to carry us all the way till the end, because they hadn't lost when they scored 4 goals or more this season. And then they forgot to do any offense for the rest of the game.
Or play really well done defense.
Yeah.
It would have been nice if they were able to, get another insurance goal after Kiviranta scored. That John Tavares tip right in front of the net on the power play was such a nice goal. Such a nice goal. That's a power play goal in the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
That's a playoff style goal. It was nice. And so
that's what you want to see.
Yeah, and like you said, they don't have a lot of momentum, but they managed to score anyway. But then, the Avalanche just do what they do, and they get a really good opportunity. Kiviranta puts one in. It would be the first goal from this exact position and almost an identical play to tie the game in the third period by the Avalanche. The 4-4 and the 4-3 goal for Colorado were almost identical, where the play was behind the net, and then a forward breaks up into the slot. They're all alone, and they bury the shot from behind the net, and boom, boom, boom. They tie the game, and then Marner trips with 6 minutes to go, and McKinnon does what he does best. And I mean, it was a blown assignment by Scott Laughton. He essentially took like 2 strides too many. And when you give McKinnon that much space, that's all it takes. And, they go down 5-4 with 6 minutes to go, or 4:15 to go by the time McKinnon scores, and then they pull the goalie with 2 minutes to go, and they score 2 more after that. So it was rough. Yeah. I mean, we haven't been good all year with our goalie pulled. No. So
and it's been a weird weakness for this team that they can't accomplish anything. It feels like it's almost a holdover from the beginning of the year when the power play was really bad.
Yeah.
Or it's like you give the Leafs an advantage and they're like, we don't know what to do with this. We don't know how to handle having an advantage, and now we're stuck. And then the puck goes the other way, 2 goals. It's kind of unfortunate that it was Marner that took the tripping penalty. It was an obvious tripping penalty.
Yeah.
But I felt like Marner was having a really great game, and he was, keeping he had the 2 goals, but he was also keeping them in it. He did a terrific job breaking up a play on the back check and stuff. Like it felt like this was a good Marner game.
He's been great ever since the Four Nations face-off, honestly.
Yeah. But then he took this penalty, and as soon as he was in the box, that was kind of the final nail in the coffin. Everything sort of fell apart from there.
Yeah. You go down 5-4 with 4 minutes to go against a team that will absolutely bury on an empty net.
Mm-hmm. Oh, McKinnon might have scored the nicest empty net goal I've ever seen. Like, he put the moves on.
Yeah.
Normally these guys are
he
afraid
goes
to shoot on an empty net, and he does a little move and makes Marner look a little silly. Like, it was, there aren't many highlights of empty net goals that don't involve a goalie shooting it from the other end of the ice. I think that might be one of them. Usually you watch the highlights, you're watching it on SportsCenter, and there's a second empty net goal. They just skip that one. They're like, and the final score was 7-4. Added another empty net. I think you have to show this one. It was nice.
Yeah,
that's Nathan McKinnon. He can make an empty net goal nice.
Nathan McKinnon looks at the defender, just goes, "Oh, bye." Just blows past Morgan Riley. Yeah, I mean, once the first empty net goal goes in, it's just sort of. I was surprised that they pulled the goalie again. If I'm being honest. So yeah, that was kind of the game. We're chomping at the bit, obviously, to talk about the newbies. So let's get over to the second period. Before we do that, please make sure you hit like, make sure you hit subscribe, make sure you tell one of your Leafs buddies to come over and join us, because we are a heck of a fun team, and we are ramping up towards the playoffs, because kids, this is game 63, which means there's less than 20 games to go. We are no longer in the lead for the Atlantic. Damn it. And Florida won tonight with their newly acquired Brad Marchand. And so let's talk about the trade deadline and everything that happened yesterday. So yesterday, walking out the door for the Maple Leafs was Fraser Minten, Connor Dewar, Connor Timmins, a 2026 first, a 2027 first, and Nikita Grabenkin. 2 prospects, 2 roster players, 2 first overall picks, and a partridge in a pear tree. And in return, we get Brandon Carlo and Scott Laughton. And I think we got 1 pick we got 2 picks.
Yeah.
We got a 4th and a 6th, I think. And then
one from Pittsburgh.
And then a 5th from Pittsburgh.
Yeah, to take the Connors, Dewar, and the other one, Timmins.
Yeah.
I've already forgotten him.
Yeah. Hopefully we can get a different Connor in the next offseason. Next year. That would be great.
Yeah.
But yeah, Brandon Carlo coming in as the unexpected trade. There was rumors for the last couple of months leading up to the trade deadline that Scott Laughton was a trade target for the Maple Leafs, among others. After Braden Shen was basically taken off the market by the Blues, it was not really a surprise to any of us that Scott Laughton ended up on the Maple Leafs. But Brandon Carlo was not somebody that I ever expected to see in blue and white being traded from Boston. They mentioned something on the game tonight that I forgot, that he actually got the game-winning goal in Game 6 last year against Boston.
Oh.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah. So lovely.
That's great. But he had his first game tonight with the Maple Leafs. There was actually pictures circulating on all the social medias last night of Brandon Carlo at the airport, actually at the counter with his bag of hockey equipment. Apparently, Carlo and Coyle both flew together, actually, down to Colorado. Obviously, Coyle playing for Colorado tonight. But what did you think of Brandon Carlo's play tonight, Dom? What did you think of the acquisition? And what did you think of his play tonight?
I was very happy with the acquisition of Brandon Carlo.
Same.
Like you said, it was unexpected. That wasn't a name that I think was on anybody's radar. There were, I mean, the Bruins basically decided just to, send a bunch of people out the door. And, hindsight being 2020, maybe knowing that Charlie Coyle was available, maybe instead of Laughton, you want him. But,
what would that have costed?
Yeah. Well, that's the question, but they've sent so much out the door anyways.
Yeah.
Might as well send everything out the door if that's what you're
I do think part of that would have been like because there's no way Boston would have been able to retain on both of the players too, right?
Yeah, that's got to factor into it as well.
Yeah.
But Brandon Carlo is excited, like he fits the mold of what this team wants, what this team needs, what everybody in the league seems to want. And so in that sense, very glad to see him in the blue and white. Looking forward to seeing if they can, find something, some chemistry between him and Morgan Riley. That would be very nice to see, because prior to this trade, I had been hoping that we would get another reunion with Luke Schenn. That always felt like that would have been the way to go, but that he's obviously in Winnipeg, and so this instead actually feels like it might be better long term. But he didn't have the best start. It felt like he was not. He didn't get off to a great start. I think he was in the wrong place for at least one of the first two goals, and it was a little bit less than ideal of a start. So he got better as the game went. I felt like he settled in, but it was a rough start. So really, I'll start to judge him more on his Leafs play once he gets a practice or two under him. Once they get a couple more games together, we'll see how he does against Utah. We'll see how he does. I think is it Florida later in the week. Like we'll see how he does in those games, and that'll give us a better sense of what his potential is as a Maple Leaf. Because I think this is a good trade. I think this is the kind of player that they want and they need. But this game was not his best foot forward.
No, and in fairness, like you said, he was actually on the ice for the first two goals against for the Leafs tonight. Both of the Nichushkin goals in the first 6 minutes of the game. You could just tell that he didn't know what the plays were going to be. He didn't know where he was supposed to be. He didn't know what his coverage was supposed to be. In fairness, 36 hours ago, he was playing in Boston and did not really think that being traded was an option.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he even said himself, on both of the trade centers, on both Sportsnet and TSN yesterday, it was announced that basically he was shocked when he got a phone call just after 3 o'clock. He was even more shocked when he found out that he was going to Toronto. Now, apparently, he's quite excited to be a part of it now. But 36 hours ago, folks, he was playing for Boston, and this team was his mortal enemy, essentially.
Yeah.
Right? So it does feel different for Carlo versus Laughton. There's no real animosity between the Leafs and the Flyers in this day and age. There's a lot with Boston. There's a thick and developed layer of salt that separates us. And I think we as Leaf fans and Boston fans too, we were all shocked with both those trades that happened yesterday regarding Boston. Both the Marchand trade to Florida, which we're going to talk about that in this segment too. And the fact that Marchand only cost a second rounder.
How? Why?
Yep, I know. But imagine being a Boston fan and seeing your captain go, seeing one of your mainstay defensemen leaving. A number of their other players, Justin Brazeau left and Trent Frederick, both gone. Like, imagine how Pasternak feels right now.
Yeah.
Like, his only real good buddy there is, like, Charlie McAvoy now.
he should request a trade to play with his other good buddy William Nylander. I think that's that's what his next move should be.
That would be great. That would be great. Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think that he had a rough start to the game. Brandon Carlo was obviously he was struggling to play, but the more he played, the more he was playing with Morgan Rielly, the more he seemed to settle in, and by the end of the game, I was really liking how he was playing. He seemed to settle in. I think obviously it's just going to take some time. Now, I do want to say Carlo looked like he was adjusting a lot quicker than the other person that the Maple Leafs acquired yesterday. Scott Laughton also had a tough outing tonight. That third line, I do think, is going to be good. I do think him and Domi are going to become buddies. They're very similar in terms of physique, in terms of the edge that they play with, in terms of their not taking bullshit, but I'm just under 6 feet-ness. And I think that line is going to be good. It just wasn't tonight.
Yeah. Like I said, it's a tough position for the player coming in to slide into this role. You know, I think he knew he was being traded. It was just a matter of where. So it wasn't as much a surprise for Laughton as it was for Carlo. But he gets put onto this third line that has been a big question mark for the Leafs all year, with the expectation of, okay, you're here, fix it. Like we need you to resolve the issues that we've had up until this point. And that's a lot to put on a guy. That's a lot to ask somebody to do. And you're putting him out there with Max Domi, who has had a tough year in a lot of ways. And Bobby McMahon, who has had a pretty good year. So you kind of got this weird, one side is doing pretty good, the other side not so much. And you're now asked to bring it all together at a position really you haven't played a whole lot of this year. Laughton spent a lot of time on the wing for the Flyers. So it's going to be an interesting mix. I'm really curious to see how the bottom six plus the left wing slot with Nylander and Tavares plays out over the end of the year, because it feels like there's a couple of players that could shift up, a couple of players that could shift down. Holmberg has had a pretty good run in that spot. He hasn't been bad. I still think it's Bobby McMahon's spot ultimately. But then if you move Holmberg down, does he join the third line? Where does Calle Yarncroc fit in if he's ever healthy enough to play or ever gets up to game speed? Those questions sort of shift things around, and you answered a little bit of it by getting rid of Dewar, but I don't, what is going on with Ryan Reeves? Is he a Marley now? Do we know that yet? He cleared waivers, but
I don't think he's being assigned to the Marlies. I think they're just going to keep him in a suit in a hallway leading to the room.
Yeah,
I think he'll be there for the high fives and the butt smacks after the game. If he plays a game, something has gone terribly wrong. Yeah. Because tonight, Calle Yarncroc was actually healthy scratched to make room for Scott Laughton. I think they wanted to see what it looked like. Yeah. Now, I don't think that that's a bad idea. I was actually just looking at my notes, and back in December, our third line had at one point 10 points in 2 games. Do you remember what that third line was?
Was this the Domi, Robertson, McMahon?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. So it's clear that line can work. A combination of those 3 players. There was the Maple Leafs, one second. There was a podcast that I listened to while I was driving around doing all of my errands today. The Leaf Report. Jonas Siegel and James Myrtle. I was listening to them today, and both of those guys actually really believe that there is a really good chance that Scott Laughton is actually going to end up in that left wing role on the second line, which is possible, because we know that the third line of Max Domi, Nick Robertson, and Bobby McMahon has been able to string together really good pieces of offense and times of offense, and they did it for multiple weeks at a time. So it's clear that they can do it. It's about trying to get them back to that. And I think that it's harder for a forward to come in to a game without ever going to a practice and adjusting to the system more than a defenseman.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. I think that Laughton's going to benefit more from a practice than Carlo will. I think they both will benefit, obviously, but I think that the ceiling on Laughton is maybe higher than tonight's game would show.
Yeah, yeah, and they brought him in to be like a presence to mix it up a little bit the way they have, and there he did do that a couple of times. He did sort of deliver on that part of the game. So there's signs that it can work, but the first game is always going to be a little bit awkward. It's not like the beginning of the year, somebody coming in and you get 2 week, you get a month of training camp. This is okay. Go figure it out on the fly, and once you get those practices in, all of a sudden things will start to make more sense. You'll start to see where the chemistry is. And if he works better with Tavares and Nylander, if he works better on the wing, then I think that's where you put him. And you figure out the third line. You try to make the Domi, Robertson, McMahon thing work again. You see if Calle Yarncroc can shake that up and have two of those other guys plus Yarncroc be the third line.
Mm-hmm.
They had Robertson playing on the fourth line tonight, which was interesting. He didn't seem to have much of an impact on the game, but maybe that's an interesting place for him, putting him alongside Kampf and Lorentz and seeing if there's something that can create a little bit of an added spark, a little bit of an added threat to that fourth line that mainly deals with the defensive situations. Like there's room to play. There's 20 games or less than 20 games to go, but there's still plenty of time left to try things and see if there's a combination that can work come game 83 and see if things will work there.
Yeah, I think I don't know if I can say it any better than you just did. I think that all of that is going to come with time. Like you said, we have some really good options now. I will say that Nick Robertson was playing on the fourth line, and at one point he actually did end up in the latter half of the game actually moving up to the second line. I think that the Pontus Holmberg experiment needs to be over with him on the left side. I think that whoever you put there, you could put Scott Laughton, you could put Calle Yarncroc, you can put Bobby McMahon, and I think all three of those players are better options than Pontus Holmberg.
Yeah,
I don't
it's always
like. Do they see something that I don't?
This is what I keep wondering because and I say this as somebody who likes Pontus Holmberg a lot as a player. He doesn't seem suited for the top six, but they continue to roll him out there, and you'll see really good shifts here and there, and you wonder if they're just hoping that can become the norm. But it's been odd to me that he's had that role, and again I keep going back to McMahon not being there because he seemed like the obvious fit. Now Laughton might be the more obvious one now, but it's odd. It's odd. And when they shifted Robertson up there for a couple of shifts, you thought, okay, maybe they're going to try this out. Maybe that's a better fit. Holmberg feels more like a fourth line guy. But before long, they were back to having Holmberg with Nylander and Tavares, and Robertson was back to his fourth line duties. It's an interesting one. I don't quite get it, but every Leafs coach seems to really like this guy. Keefe really liked him. Now Berube seems to really like him. I guess they see something in him that you have to be a National Hockey League coach to see. You get the special National Hockey League coach glasses or something. You can figure it out, but it's an odd one.
Yeah, because there's obviously a piece of this puzzle that I just don't see, and that's fine. I'm wrong, obviously, because they keep running him out there, and he's gotten a longer leash in that position than anyone else has gotten.
Yeah, he really has.
Like long stretches of games. Other players, it's been like a game and a half, maybe 2 games. He's been like the last 6 games he's been in that role. And has he played so well that it's shown you that that's the only real option? Because I don't see that.
No, it doesn't.
I don't know.
I don't think so. Again, there'll be shifts here and there where they get a lot of momentum going, a lot of pressure. But it's not consistent, and it's not anything more than you think you would get from somebody else in that position, because ultimately it is Nylander and Tavares driving the offense, driving the pressure, and the third person is there to be in the right place at the right time and dig out some pucks here and there.
Yeah, and I just like, it's not even like he wins so many battles either. Like he loses more than he wins, so I don't know. I don't know. If you have the answer, please throw it in the chat, and I'd be happy to tell you that you're right. Let's move over into the third period. Before we do that, let's talk a little bit about Hyperdrive Hockey. So Hyperdrive Hockey is the main flagship show for Game Over. It goes out every Tuesday and Thursday. It's hosted by three wonderful hosts that have a little bit of a francophone flavor. It is a wonderful show. It's where you can get all of your hockey news from not just the NHL but internationally as well. So please make sure you go hit that out. Make sure you hit like. Make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you follow both Dominic and I on socials as well. You can follow the Game Over Network. Please go check out thegameovernetwork.com. You have the actual shows there. We have our shop there. You can get some merch. You can see all about the different hosts and what we all do and our backgrounds and all of that fun stuff. And that's all on thegameovernetwork.com. So make sure you go check that out. And we're going to move over into our third period. Make sure you get your questions down in the chat as well, so that when the overtime period rolls around in about 10 minutes, we can take your questions. Tell us what you thought about the trades. Who do you wish that they had gotten maybe instead of Scott Laughton? Zach Payne, in case you're watching, I know that you're probably very upset with how he played tonight. So let's talk about looking forward for the Leafs, because like you said, they do have a little bit of I don't know why all those reports were coming out saying that they have the easiest schedule moving forward, because that seems like a lie. Because tomorrow they are facing the Utah Hockey Club, who are fighting for their playoff position lives. On Thursday, we are playing against the Florida Panthers with their newly minted nightmare line of what in the playoffs will be Sam Bennett, Matthew Tkachuk, and Brad goddamn Marchand, the rat going to the town of rats. And then on next weekend, we have the Senators, followed up by playing the Flames on the Monday, the 17th, St. Patrick's Day. And then we're back playing Colorado the 19th, followed by a game against the Rangers, who are still fighting for their playoff lives. So tough week and a half coming up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. It's going to be fascinating to see. Here's what I want to say about the Marchand thing, though. Here's my hope for this situation. Here's my hope is that we've talked about the Leafs needing to get past their ghosts, get past all of the monsters under their bed that have haunted them throughout their playoff runs, and by putting Marchand on the Panthers, there's now the opportunity to kill two birds with one round. Because more so than the Boston Bruins haunting the Toronto Maple Leafs, I think Brad Marchand has haunted the Toronto Maple Leafs. And so we couldn't get it done against the Bruins last year. Couldn't slay the dragon, couldn't kill that monster. And ever since the infamous "We Want Florida" chants, the Panthers have become that monster as well. So combine the two monsters, kill them both in one round. All the ghosts will be gone, and then it's a straight shot to the final. That's my that's my hope. That's my delirious fantasy situation. That's me. I believe they call this stage bargaining. I think is
denial. Actually, it might just be straight up in denial. Yeah, I mean, I think that if Florida goes on a run here, just call them the Florida Frankenshans.
Yeah, really.
Because it was clear that Brad wanted to stay in Boston, and he physically went to management and said, I want to work something out, and they couldn't. And then he requested to be traded to Florida.
Yeah.
I mean, we should have seen this coming from Four Nations, right? Because he was hanging out with Sam Bennett and Sam Reinhart, who were both on Team Canada, and apparently they all had great chemistry. And I'm sure it's going to be fine. Now, we should talk about the fact that Florida is currently leading in the Atlantic now, especially with the Leafs loss tonight. I think they've now pulled away by 3 points. So it is going to be a tough outing for whoever faces that team in the playoffs, because that sounds like It is kind of like a Hydra situation, right? Where you cut away one head and then two more sprout out. Oh, or like, you know, in the original Fantasia where they split the brooms in half and then it turns into two brooms. Dun, 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 dun. That's what it's going to be with Florida this year. And it's going to haunt me in my nightmares as an adult like I was a child. Great. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. It does look like we are headed for an inevitable third Leafs Lightning series. Might be back on the docket. So I guess best 2 out of 3 in the first round between the Leafs and the Lightning will determine who gets to take on the monstrosity that is the Florida Frankensteins at this point. But it's going to be real interesting. It's going to be a real interesting finish. It's not over yet by any stretch of the imagination. The Leafs and the Panthers are playing this week coming up, and that game suddenly takes on a whole heck of a lot of importance. And it's the sort of game that this team has in the past struggled to get up for, has struggled to show up for. And a real statement from the new guys, from the returners, from everybody would be to go into a game like that. And whether or not they could take the lead of the division in that game, or if it's just don't let them completely get away with the division in that game. You want to win on Thursday, and you want to be in the game. Like, it's not even a game where you want to be in it and just battle and make them wonder. That's not enough. That's not enough anymore. It's no moral victories. No no just showing up and making it difficult. You need to win that game. You need to send that message if you want to win. It's essential if you want to win the division. That is essential, especially if they lose on Monday to Utah, which would be awful. But it's essential to do that to win the division. But you need to also make that statement going into the last run of games, last sort of 4 weeks of games. And, Thursday's going to be real interesting.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, we're in the home stretch here, right? We got 19 games to go. 18 now. It's sudden. It's funny, eh? The season always feels so long at the beginning. Oh my gosh, there's so many games to go. And then all of a sudden it's game 63. And the screenshot of our schedules is suddenly visible at the very end, right? So it's just, it'll be interesting to see how the Leafs can sort of continue to fight out of this. Like you said, they're playing Utah on Monday, and then a huge game against the Panthers, and then an opportunity to keep the Senators out of a playoff spot as well. All coming up this week. I will say, and I might regret this in 7 weeks when the playoffs start. But whatever. I don't think I have that much sway, or they would have won by now. It does feel kind of nice to have this last stretch of games feel relevant in a way that a lot of seasons haven't, right? In the last few years, whatever the standings were leading into the All-Star break, that was it. With very little movement. And there are so many teams that are at play. And that obviously impacted the trade deadline yesterday. The number of options that there were at center were very few. And that is part of the reason why we had to pay so much, was because there was half a dozen centers on the market, and that was kind of it. And a lot of other teams made plays earlier in the week to make trades, right? Yanni Gourde was traded, I think, on the Thursday. Braden Shen was essentially taken off the market on Wednesday, where the Blues came out and said that we're not trading him. And so all of a sudden, what seems like what we previously thought was a lot, the list is now halved. So all of that leads into it, and it feels nice that these games mean something and there's something to still fight for.
Yeah, I mean, what was it? The 2022-2023 season was like, it was just this like long, sad march to the first round showdown between the Leafs and the Lightning. Like, there was no doubt from basically the start of the season that it was going to be a rematch of the previous year. And last year there was a little bit of movement right at the end with Florida and Boston switching places. But this year, but it never felt like the Leafs were in control.
Yeah.
There was an element of, well, something might happen to one of these teams that will change who we play, but we can't control it. We're not in a spot where we can get up to the top of the division and face somebody potentially from outside the division. This year, there is still that opportunity. 3 points back is not overcomable.
No.
They can get to that point again, especially if they win on Thursday. That is kind of the linchpin in all of this. And if you do that, then you're in a good spot to control your own destiny and potentially face somebody other than one of the two teams from Florida. You could get the Senators, you could get the Rangers, you could get the Blue Jackets, which I don't want to play the Blue Jackets because I just
it feels like you're the baddies.
It feels like you're the bad guys, and you're gonna lose. The magic is with the Blue Jackets. They're gonna win a round, and of course it's gonna be against the Maple Leafs. So I'm sure they're looking at it, going, "Bring on the rematch of the bubble series. Let's do it." But I'd rather bring back the Battle of Ontario. Let's do a Battle of Ontario.
Yeah.
How much fun would that be?
Well, I could use some new trauma.
Yeah. Hey,
mix it up.
we always used to win the Battle of Ontario. No matter how bad the season was,
That's
you
true.
get a first round between the Leafs and the Sens, and the Leafs would win it somehow. And so we just need to bring that early 2000s magic back. we need to have Lord of the Rings movies and Star Wars movies in the theaters again, and we'll have a Leafs Senators playoff series, and it'll just be excellent.
Dominic, don't tell me with a good time, okay? That's too much. That's too much. Don't make me go get my elven brooch, okay? So let's move over into the overtime. Let's talk about some of the other things that happened on the trade deadline. Make sure you get your questions and make sure you hit like. Make sure you hit subscribe. Let's move into overtime. All right. So Marchand going for a second. Damn. Now, another thing I do really briefly want to talk about. Sorry, I was going to go off on a tangent, and then I remembered something that was brought up in the second intermission. Apparently, so yesterday was the trade deadline. We've said it 100 times in the show already. And one of the biggest players that was at play yesterday was Mikko Rantanen. And he ended up going to Dallas. The contract extension was basically done, 8/12. Congratulations, Mikko. There is a good possibility that Dallas and Colorado could face each other in the playoffs. Wouldn't that be a bad Hydra situation for Colorado? But by all reports, the Leafs were very close to getting Mikko Rantanen. And it did come out later on that the Leafs were offering Fraser Minten, Easton Cowan, and 2 first-round picks, the 2 first-round picks that ended up going out the door to other teams instead. But the Carolina Hurricanes wanted Mitch Marner as part of the actual package. So Leafs management went to the Leafs. Went to Marner. Marner said no. But very interesting to see that another team was already wanting to have a shot at Mitch Marner. How did you feel when you heard that? And what would you have felt if that had happened?
It's interesting because it's a whole range of emotions, right? Because on the one hand, we like Mitch. Like sometimes we forget that, but we like Mitch Marner, and I don't want to see him in another team's jersey. At the same time, Mikko Rantanen's a very good player and would love to see him in a Leafs jersey. So if that swap has to be made, that's something you do have to seriously consider. And I understand why Treliving and co would take that to Marner and say, look, we're considering this. What do would you waive your no move clause for this? What I take from it more than anything is that we have to get ready for the possibility, the very real possibility that Marner is not a Maple Leaf next season.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people tried to trade him last year. Mm-hmm. And I know people have been talking about him potentially leaving all year, that he wants to test the open market. My feeling has always been that he would rather be here. But the question is, does Leafs management want him here at all costs. It all comes back to the money. And I think what this showed is that they are willing to part with him. Now, it may have just been under these very specific circumstances.
Sure.
I don't, the best player available on the free agent market next year is going to be Mitch Marner. There is not Mikko Rantanen's off the market now. He's going to hang out in Dallas for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
And good for him. But so there isn't like another obvious option, but this was the first real sign that the Leafs are considering what life could be like without Mitch Marner. Again, could be specific to the situation, or it could be, maybe a harbinger of things to come.
Yeah. I mean, the good thing is that Mikko Rantanen did sign an 8-year deal at $12 million. And I think that Mitch Marner would have a heck of a time saying that he's worth more, a higher AAV, a higher contract number. I think that it would be a very difficult argument for Mitch Marner to win, saying that he is more valuable for Mikko Rantanen. Now, the other side of that is that I believe Mitch Marner is about a year or two younger. But he wants to stay here. And that is the small amount of leverage that Leafs management does have. If you want to stay here, great. This is the number that we are willing to give you. And if you want to go make $15 million, it sounds like there are other teams that are willing to do that.
Yeah. Well,
and congratulations, but it will not be here. Because I'm sorry, sorry.
No, go
no
ahead,
matter,
go ahead.
no
Take
matter,
it away.
no matter how good Mitch Marner is, I think that Matthew Knies is more irreplaceable than Mitch Marner is. And I think the bigger priority in this offseason needs to be signing Matthew Knies. I think that the day that the playoffs end, you go to Matthew Knies and you hand him a blank check and you say, whatever you would like, sir. Because there's not a lot of brand new 23-year-old people that are turning into an unbelievable power forward in the league. They just don't exist like that.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. Ultimately, the question for Marner is going to be, do you want to make as much money as possible, or do you want to win?
And do you want to do it here?
Yeah, do you want to do it here? But because the teams that are going to be able to offer him the $15 million, are they ready to win now? Are they ready to win right away? Or are you going to go languish in Chicago for a couple years before things are really looking up? Now, maybe he thinks, it'd be fun to play with Connor Bedard. Maybe there's some magic that could happen there. But again, it ultimately comes down to the playoffs, and I think it's both sides. So we've been looking at the playoffs from the from the Leafs wanting Marner perspective, where if Marner has a good playoffs, then the Leafs will be more inclined to want to re-sign him. I think for Marner, if it's another first-round exit, he might also think, maybe there's a team that will give me comparable money. It's maybe not the maximum money I can make, but it's comparable money, and maybe I can go play there and maybe get out of the first round, for the second time in my life. Or if the run goes well, and even if they come up short, but they get way further than they've ever gotten before.
Make it to a conference final.
Yeah, conference final, make it exciting, go 6 games, 6 hard-fought games. Maybe both sides look at it and go, okay, there's something to build on for real this time. Like let's do it here. But that's going to be the real deciding factor for these guys. But I agree, signing Knies is going to be essential. Given how tough it was to acquire centers, signing Tavares might have gotten even more important as well.
Especially how he played tonight, man. He looks pretty good.
Looks pretty good.
It's pretty good.
Once you take away that $11 million cap hit and you put him at 6 or even
half
7,
it.
Yeah, suddenly things are looking pretty good.
Yeah,
you're feeling pretty good about John Tavares.
Yeah, absolutely. Matthew in the chat, welcome back, Matthew. Happy to have you back, friend. Tampa Bay, the only way we can get into the second round. Also, Marner has to show that he can perform in the playoffs to get paid. Playoff clutchness. I agree. I think that if they go, if you go to a conference final and Mitch Marner does what he does in the first game that they played in the Four Nations where he gets the OT winner, He gets a couple of those. He has a couple of clutch plays where they actually connect and, win when they have to and win in the games that they need to win in where they haven't been able to in the years past. I think that not only Leafs fans, but Leafs management makes it a lot easier of a big pill to swallow, giving him a raise if he actually comes up and performs as well in the playoffs as he has in the Four Nations and since. Because he's good right now, man. Like, I don't know if a year ago Mitch Marner takes those 2 shots tonight.
No, he probably is looking to pass. I think there was a play early in the third period where Domi should have shot and he went to pass instead. And it's almost like, oh, that's what Mitch was doing 2 years ago. And you kind of want to just sit Domi down and show him, Mitch, and just do this. Yeah. He used to be like you, but now he does this and now he gets all these goals. But yeah, I mean, look, the dream scenario is that Riley, Marner, and Matthews all connect on the goal the same way Makar, Marner, and McDavid did on the winner against the U.S. That's the dream scenario. That's what you hope to see. But yeah, ultimately it comes down to, can he show that clutchness we saw with Team Canada applies to the other team with the maple leaf on their chest. Yeah,
and the one that will hopefully play far into May.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
For a change.
Yeah.
For a change.
All right. Well, let's wrap up the stream here. Thank you for joining us on Game Over Toronto. If you could hit like and subscribe, and make sure you go subscribe to Game Over Calgary and Game Over Ottawa, because next week we are going to have the head-to-heads with those teams, and those, I think one or both of them are not on the Game Over Toronto channel. They will be on the opposing team's channel. So make sure you go check those out. You can find me on social media at Lauren6. Dominic, where can everybody find you?
You can follow me at DominicJ25 on the various social medias.
And make sure you follow the Game Over Network on any social media that you have. There's most of the hosts have TikTok and everything. I don't, because I'm an old curmudgeon. But make sure you go check those out. And thank you for watching. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening if you're listening tomorrow morning. Have a great night. We'll be back on Monday when the Leafs face the Utah Hockey Club. Have a great night, everybody.